Welcome to Leadership from the Cross with Pastor Scott Thom. This broadcast is devoted to taking your ministry and life to the next level. No matter what the level you are at, let us help advance your leadership skills. Leadership from the Cross is a ministry of Cross Christian Fellowship in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And now, Pastor Scott Thom.
Why is it that some individuals seem to have success in ministry and in life and others don't, if all things being equal? I mean, sometimes some people are just dealt a bad hand, right? And there's a lot more to overcome. But for most people in the average scenario, there always seems to be some that really take off. They make the most of their opportunities. There are others who seem to plod along. They do okay. And then there's others that just seem to almost go backwards and just die on the vine. And it doesn't always work the way we think it should work. You know, I think this guy's going to do well, and he doesn't. And other people that you look at and you go, I don't think they're going to do as well. And our perception is sometimes wrong, sometimes right, but it's because we can't really look at the intangibles. We don't always get a chance to look at the heart. And it isn't because God's not for them and he's for other people. He really gives the same opportunity to obtain leadership skills, but not all seek them out. And even when they do, not all apply them. We hear it, but we don't do it because we're so busy doing what we've always done that we don't stop to invest the time to go forward to do the right things or to develop ourselves in our leadership skills. And so you end up with some leaders that are high achievers, some that are average, and some that are very low achievers in ministry and in life and in their family and other areas. And it's not because those high achievers are mentally gifted. They're so spiritually gifted. Sometimes they have a leg up on us, but most of the time they don't. There are people who are very smart, but they just become smart at shortcuts, right? There are people who are not a benefit to society. They're criminals, but they're very smart criminals because they're abusing their God-given gifts. Well, same thing across the board, but especially in ministry and especially in leadership. And this is Leadership from the Cross, and this is what we're supposed to be getting into and studying, right? So let me cover 3 areas and give you some illustrations of why some people are more successful, why some people are just average in their leadership and in their ministry, and some are just frankly low achievers. And the first one I wanted to cover, the first one we want to look at here is that successful leaders, they focus on people as the priority. They focus on people as the priority. High achievers care about people as much as they care about the vision. If you were talking about business, you would say that this businessman, this business person cares as much about the people as he does profit. I mean, you have to have profit, right? You have to have a vision, right, in ministry. But that doesn't override people. You don't step on people to get the vision done. High achievers build people while building the vision. They are people who look at other people and hope and wish and desire and work towards the best for those people in the short term and in the long run, because they know if they do, that will ultimately help the bottom line. That will ultimately help the vision. And yes, there's a lot of time invested, and sometimes these people move on, and you invest more time in them than you get back. But overall, you're going to get back a lot more than if you didn't invest in them. And the average achievers, they concentrate on producing, right? They're rah about the individuals, and they'll build up the individuals only so much as it produces, only so much as it makes the vision happen. So they are just product vision oriented. They're only end game oriented. They're achieving, maybe not on a high level, but they're achieving stuff because they're focused on the end game. They are focused on the vision. Problem is, it's always people who help you get to that vision. Well, money does, but money comes through people. Well, it's ideas. Ideas come through people. Well, it's work. Work comes through people. And if we skip people, we're going to miss the vision and miss the end goal. But average achievers concentrate on the end game only. They concentrate on the vision only, or on the product only, or producing only. And what happens is people buy in, but only for a while. Because, they might buy into the vision too, and they might like the company, or they might like the ministry or whatever, but they feel less important because it's never about them. It's never about the people, and it's never about what and how they are achieving and helping, or how they're growing through it. So they'll do some. I mean, this isn't evil or wrong. It's just, it's not the best. Low achievers, however, will concentrate only on not just the goal, but only on themselves in that goal. They have a security mindset. They have a mindset of, I just want to stay in control. I just want to stay on top. And I'm not really caring how we get there. I just want to remain in control when we get there. These are self-centered individuals. They really do lack vision, except where it comes from them staying in power or staying in the leadership position. And this really lacks faith. They're not trusting God. They're fearful in that. Examples of this in Scripture, and I know I've used this a lot in the past, but I am just amazed at, when I'm going through this and laying these things out, how much there is a contrast between King David and King Saul. And David, he loved the people. He loved God. But when he was being chased by Saul, he got to meet the people. And what did he do? Did he cry and moan and complain that Saul was chasing him down? No, he took it into his own hands to protect Israel. He began to protect the people. He began to protect people's flocks, their homes, their towns, their villages, their fields. And he became an overseer and a caretaker for Israel. He started doing it, but he knew it wasn't just enough to expand the kingdom. You had to protect the people in the kingdom. It wasn't enough about giving decrees or sitting on a throne or going to fancy balls or banquets or whatever that the kings would do at the time, and pomp and circumstance. Hey, he would live in a cave. He would live in En-Gedi. He would live with the wolves and the lions and the tigers and the bears. Oh my, you get the picture. And he cared about the people even when he wasn't in ultimate power. And it wasn't a means to the power. It was just, he felt it was his responsibility. Great leaders and leaders that achieve on a high level take it as their responsibility to watch after the flock, not use or abuse the flock. Now, when did he ever go wrong? Did he ever mess up? Sure, he messed up. When did he go wrong? When he began to number the people and he began to think of his security and his power. And there was a lapse of faith and not trusting the Lord. And the people were a means to the end, his greatness and the kingdom's greatness. And he messed up. But God brought him back. He got refocused. It was great. Saul, God brought people around him, but Saul ended up average to low achiever because he used people. Now, he had victories, but how did his victories come about? The people God brought around him, and he had some ability. He was average or a little above average, but it was mostly David. It was mostly his son Jonathan that would sacrifice for Saul, and he would sacrifice them, right? He put his son in harm's way. He put David in harm's way for his own egotistical purpose so that they would sing the praises of Saul. He lacked vision for the people, and the only vision he wanted was his own security, self-control, keeping himself in power. The second point, now that first point is what? That successful leaders, they focus on people as much as the priority, if not more, right? So successful leaders focus on people as a priority. Number 2, successful leaders have a good relationship with other leaders. The high achievers are optimistic about leadership. They're forward thinking on leadership. They love leaders. They love other high achievers. They seek high achievers, or they try to train them if they can't find them. They're always looking at developing leadership. They surround themselves with great leaders. They know that when you have great leaders around yourself, you're going to grow, your ministry is going to grow, your business is going to grow. It happens because people, right? Ideas, money, work, all these things happen because of people. And if you have great people around you and high achievers around yourself who's a high achiever, you're going to have high success in whatever you do. On average, right? Most of the time, there's certain things that can come up, but you're going to have great success. Look, high achievers attract high achievers. And even when somebody's a low achiever and they attract a high achiever, they're not going to stay around very long because they're going to get frustrated because low achievers or average achievers are not going to take their ideas seriously. They're not going to appreciate their work. They're going to use their work because that person, that high achiever, is a means to an end. And so they are going to move on and do something somewhere else where they're appreciated or do their own thing. So high achievers always attract high achievers. If you're a level 10 leader, which is like the top leader, if we're going on a scale of 1 to 10, right? 10 being the best, you're going to attract 7s, 8s, and 9s, other 10-point leaders. But if you are a 3-level leader, it's hard to attract level 7 or 8 or 9 because they'll come into the organization or they'll come into the ministry and then they'll get flustered because this just isn't working out. I don't really have creative freedom. I'm just a note taker, a servant just taking orders and not having any creativity or any new ventures that I can jump into and organize and go beyond or go outside the box because I've got a leader who is fearful of that. So high achievers love other leaders. But average achievers accept leaders, but don't put a priority on them. They're okay with that. And they would like to get high achievers, but they don't put a priority on it. They don't think long-term. They don't think long-term training because they just don't have time. They are an average achiever because their time gets used up doing instead of teaching. Their time gets used up by everything that pops up in front of them, the tyranny of the urgent, the stuff that comes in that day, the email that's in front of them, rather than thinking more long-term and leveraging the people that they have and building those people up so that they can move forward and that the whole group can move forward. They really think anyone can do the job that is asked of these leaders. They don't think their leaders are special in any way. So they're saying they've got a mindset like, oh, I got this guy and he's pretty good, but we could find other guys like that. Instead of going, hey, we got this guy, he's pretty good. We can make him great though. Let's pour into him. And then whatever ministry he does is great. And the ministry is a sum of all the parts, right? So if you lift up each of the parts, the greater part, the whole, is going to be that much better. But if you have the mindset like, well, anybody can teach that Bible study. Anybody can do that. Oh, we don't need to invest time in that person, or check and see how they're doing, or, give them more of what they need, make them a better organizer, better in their thought process, better in doctrine, better, whatever it is, it falls short. Low achievers, they frankly distrust leaders. They steer subordinates away from growth. Oh, you don't need to go get online studies. You don't need to read more books. We're doing good. Everything's copacetic. We're just not going to shake the tree. We're not going to rock the boat. Matter of fact, we don't want leaders to be in competition. We don't want people to think we're better than other people. And they have this kind of negative view of leadership and of leaders around them, partially because of their insecurity, but partially because they have a misconception of leadership. And leadership is more about position and authority rather than people and strategy. So, number 2, successful leaders have a good relationship with other leaders. And if they don't, they miss it. Paul was an exceptional leader because he was always building and training leaders. He was always looking and finding leaders. He attracted leaders, didn't he? Even when, right after he persecuted the church, there was something about Paul that Barnabas knew, this guy's a leader. I need to help him. Barnabas stood up and helped Paul, but in the meantime, Paul helped so many others. And he even commanded this in 2 Timothy 2:2. He said, "In the things which you have heard from me among many witnesses, commit these to faithful men who will be able to teach others also." He's like, find leaders, and train them how to find and train leaders themselves. But it's those leaders who get to a place that are selfish, self-reliant, and dictatorial and refusing other leaders are the ones that are low achievers. They may have limited success because of some part of their nature or their connections, but they fall on their face eventually. John warned about this, that these leaders have a distrust. They have a self-centeredness that destroys the church. He wrote about Diotrephes in 3 John, that this guy loves to have the preeminence among them and does not receive the apostles. He doesn't receive other leaders. See, he wants his own band, and he wants everybody to march to his tune only. Very dangerous. It can work for a while if you have a talented band leader, but pretty soon it's the only song he knows, and people will move on. People will see through it. The third point, or the third area that you want to have in ministry and to be a high achiever, is to seek advice and insight. So number 3 is successful leaders seek counsel and wisdom. Successful leaders seek advice. They seek insight. especially high achievers. They take every opportunity to gain insight. They surround themselves with counselors and accountability partners. It's not threatening to them. They love it. Tell me more, give me more. They can even learn from those that they train. They will glean the last bit of gems from the fragments that are out there. You've seen these shows where they produce gold or gems, and it's amazing. You get this gold dust, this really fine dust, this gold slurry from moving mountains. I mean, they're moving tons and tons of rock and they're washing it off, and you get this ounce or two, for running a ton of dirt. And they put this tremendous effort into it. But that gold, once refined, is worth, $1,000, $1,200, $1,400 on and on. And then it's worth the work. But most people will never set up to do that kind of work, nor will they think that they can get anything from their subordinates. But great leaders will even listen to the people underneath them, especially paying attention to them when they're telling them, hey, something's broken in the midst of this, because they're the ones out there. They are constantly learning, which means that they're listeners, they're observers, they're inquisitive. You want to be around those leaders, and I can tell you, those up-and-coming leaders, when I train leaders, when I mentor men, and I've been doing it now for 30 years, the guys who will ask me the questions or the tough questions, the guys who are not afraid to say, I just don't understand that, or I'm not quite getting that, or the guys who will intently listen when you're training someone else and you're teaching someone else, and they'll pull up a chair and they'll sit down and they'll put their elbow on the table and their chin on their fist, and they will sit there and stare at you, and their ears are wide open. They have a heart to hear. And they just observe you. They want to be around you. Hey, next time you do a funeral, would you call me? I'd love to be around you. Just watch you. Just to see or study or learn one new thing. Hey, can I sit there and just answer questions on your radio program? Or answer callers' questions, or take their questions and put it in writing on the screen so you can answer them. But I want to hear your answers. These are the kind of guys and women who make excellent leaders. They're leaders in the making. They're going to sit there and say, why does that work for some people and not work for other people? They're just inquisitive. They just want to know. Those are the high achievers, but average achievers, they're reluctant to seek advice. They'll take it, but sometimes you have to force it on them. Input, yeah, give me your input. Write it down, I'll look over it. You see what I mean? Where other people are like, hey, yeah, right now I got time. Tell me what you're thinking. Unless it's an expert, the average achievers, they'll listen to experts. They'll do that. They'll read the books. But anybody can do that, and most people do. The average person does. The average leader does. But they're still status quo. They're slow to adopt or adapt. That's because, they're critical of change. And those who advocate it, they initially disregard or put down any new thing coming up. That's an average achiever. Instead of listening and then making their judgment. And I know sometimes when you're in leadership and people come in, they think that they know it all. And have you tried this? Have you tried that? Have you done? And you've been in ministry a while, and yeah, we've done all that. But you listen and you love on people. But every now and then a person comes and says, hey, have you thought of this? And they may not be an expert in it. It's just because they are observant themselves, or they just hit on something that's good. And that leader goes, man, that's a good idea. I want to talk about that some more. Where'd you come up with that idea? You're genius. And you want to be around those kind of leaders. Those are high achievers. But the average achiever is, They take few risks. They just don't want to try anything new. They'll listen to superiors. They'll listen to other people, but they don't advocate change. They're not really used to change and moving forward and trying and adapting. They're afraid of failure. High achievers are not afraid of failure. They don't like it. They try to avoid it, but they know they're going to learn a ton from it. Low achievers, though, when you're talking about successful leaders and if they're seeking advice or not seeking advice or insight, low achievers, they don't seek much advice or insight at all. They even rebuff it. Sometimes they act like they know it all because they're insecure. They want to be seen as that person who's in charge and large, right? Here's a person who just knows everything about everything, but they really don't. And when they do have someone around them for a counselor or give advice, they're not going to use it wisely. Even if they do accept it, oftentimes it's mistimed what they do, or it's underfunded or undersupported, that they're going to do it, but they do it on such a limited, lame basis that it just is not going to work out. And then they say, see, it didn't work out. I told you it wouldn't work out. They didn't put enough effort into it, enough knowledge, enough elbow grease into it to really make it happen. And it's frustrating to work under someone like that, isn't it? These are the kind of people who just rely on past experiences. They don't want to go into new things, untried things. These are the kind of people that turn and return to the policy manuals. Here's our policy. Of course you want to go by policies. Of course you want to go by the rules. But they never think that this is something that could fit within the rules, or this is something that we need new rules for. They're not adapting with the times and how things are changing. Solomon was one to study people, observe, ask questions, and learn. I mean, he is the epitome of a high achiever, very wise, or at least he started out that way, right? What happened? A little egotistical, a little self-centered, a little seeking pleasure rather than wisdom, a little folly rather than applying wisdom. And I think a lot of these proverbs come from having learned from the school of hard knocks. And I think in the end, he came back and he goes, hey, I tried everything. You want real wisdom? Serve God. This is the end of man. This is your purpose. Serve God. Serve and love God. Pleasure comes from that. Joy comes from that. Vision comes from that. Everything stems from that. What about one of his sons, though, who should have tapped into his dad's wisdom? His dad passed on, but his wisdom's written out. His wisdom is there in his counselors. Rehoboam, he rejected his father's counselors. Remember, they're right at this pinnacle. Solomon has passed on. The people come and said, man, this burden is too hard. The taxes are too high. You know, what we want to be out from underneath us. Ease the burden. And Rehoboam goes to the counselors, goes to his dad's counselors first, and they go, look, yeah, your father was kind of hard on him, and the taxes and the tributes were just too high and too hard. Ease up on them, and these guys are going to follow you anywhere because it shows you're caring about the people. But no, he listened to his young advisors who were all in the low achiever category. They haven't achieved anything yet, nor had they been around successful people like the previous counselors had been around Solomon. And so they recommended, come down hard on him instead of easing up on him. And so he came back and said, you thought my dad took it easy on you with whips. My whips are like scorpions. Oh, he lost them. He lost the people. Think about the apostles. They were high achievers. Afterwards, why? Because Jesus, the best achiever, high achiever, invested in his leadership. Jesus is the epitome of the high achiever in all these categories. It's so beautiful to look at what he did. But the apostles were men who desired to follow Jesus, but they were attentive. They were so attentive, they went and they lived wherever Jesus lived, right? Slept on the ground if Jesus slept on the ground. They ate whatever Jesus was fed. So they were very attentive. They wanted advice. They wanted counsel. They wanted to learn. And they learned to pass it on. They learned how to disciple. But the Jewish leaders, they resented Jesus. They rejected his wisdom. They only wanted to quote the old school, the old manuals, the old rabbi. Rabbi Hillel said. And they lost it. And eventually lost their ministry. We could go on and on with this. It's so fascinating when you dig into this kind of stuff. Well, this is something that I'm actually going to include into the Bible college because this is something that you don't normally get in the regular seminary level colleges. And we will incorporate this into ccfcollege.com and build a leadership. We'd hope that you'd pass it on. It's free here in Leadership from the Cross. And we would ask that you would just let others know about the podcast and get the word out and just share it. Love on people, train people. Use it. I give you permission. Use it to train your leadership or your people and bless people with it. So until next week, we love you. And this is Pastor Scott saying blessed wishes. Hey, be a good leader. Be a high achiever. All right. See you next week.
You have been listening to Leadership from the Cross with Pastor Scott Thom of Cross Christian Fellowship in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Check out Pastor Scott's ministry training school and his other radio show, No Other Doctrine, by visiting our website at crossfellowship.org. That's crossfellowship.org. Also, you can visit our Facebook page at Facebook.com/Leadership from the Cross.